Okay, so the first question is, each collage you present is so visually unique. Is there a specific method or process you undergo to create the final piece?
So the way I start a collage is that I'm an assembler. I collect pieces of color from other works, other found objects, but also a lot of recycling my own work. I like to have some kind of color underneath, maybe a color you'll never see again, but it's something that I like to respond to so that I'm working on a colored ground and I begin to place the elements of collage on top of this piece of paper. And while I'm doing it, I'm constantly moving them around and trying to figure out um, what needs to be next to what. So, but there's something very nice about holding a piece of color in your hand and being able to move it rather than painting a stroke or drawing a line. But that's only the first layer. So the collages are actually built sort of like the idea of a foundation of a house, and there are layers, and the collage grows. And I never know when I begin where I'm going to, what mediums I'm going to add to make the collage have the kind of quality that I'm looking for.
What inspiration do you take for the structure of the piece? Like, how do you decide where to place each individual detail?
I'm thinking about these collages in a peculiar way that I'm thinking about the compositions as maps, as plan view. So I'm almost thinking about them as like a city that I'm walking through, seen from above. So each piece sort of feels like a building or a space, and my decisions are made about the size and color of each of these shapes, but also the way that there is a sort of plan on how you can experience and move through the collage.
Your larger collages are significantly different in both their composition and content than your smaller collages. So, how would you define this difference in style?
So I think it's chronological. The big collages were all made in the very large ones, which are 44 by 30 inches, were made in 2012. And actually, they were made as part of a community project in Milton, Georgia, where I live. And that I asked the community to come together. We had about 50 people creating the first layer of the collages together. They came and they brought work with pieces of paper with them of things that had meaning to them or colors they liked. It was a diverse group of ages from, I think the youngest was 8 and the oldest was, I think 87, and everybody in between. And we made as groups, we worked on the first layer. The second layer then came into my studio, and I worked on these collages because the first layer was very beautiful, but it had no way to be held together visually. And at that time, I was working on a kind of curvilinear gesture, and so the second layer was actually painted with a kind of gestural movement that was in response to that first layer made by the community. And that's why it's very different. There was this very much a curvilinear work.
How would you describe how your collages reflect not only you as a person, but you as an artist?
So my collages are made of works recycled, repurposed works I've made in the past. So they actually draw attention. They're like paintings within paintings. So each little piece it has a remnant, has a touch, has a color palette that is my own. And then the whole work, of course, is about my relationship to these pieces, how I put them together, and how the color resonates.
Collage work is extremely different, and each artist perceives it differently. How long do you estimate spending, and on which piece do you remember spending the longest time on? And how do you know when to stop? When can you tell when the piece is done?
Some collages I have been working on for an extremely long time. Sometimes I put them aside and then I continue to work on them. I look at them, I reflect on them, I think about what they need, and also the idea of risk. So sometimes I have to take a risk and ruin everything, ruin months of work because it needs to have another element. Sometimes the element is a layer of paint, which may or may not work. But the whole process is additive, and additive until the collage has a feeling of completeness and satisfaction for me.
What brought about your preference for mixed media and vellum? Have these materials presented any difficulties while working? How would you suggest that the specific material you choose does the best job at expressing your vision in your collages?
I really love vellum. Vellum is a beautiful kind of paper that has a translucency to it. And if you think about my other work, my large scale installations, they are all either have a color transparency or translucency involved with it. So I love that quality. I love the quality of when you can hold the drawing up to the light and the light comes through it. It has a kind of luminosity that other kinds of paper do not have for me. The challenges of using found objects is that you become a hoarder. Everything is a possible collage element. You receive some junk mail in the mail, and it has a particular beautiful red in it. So, of course, that goes in the pile to go into the studio rather than in the recycling pile. So that's the real problem is that you become engaged with all kinds of objects and things, and you don't know what's going to work its way into the collage. For instance, recently I have been using the rice that I had bought for a while, and I saved these bags, burlap bags. They're printed from basmati rice, excuse me, and they're quite lovely. They're lovely, and now they're starting to be collaged into the drawings. So who knew? But I did know because there was something about them that I really loved, and I love them in the collages.
How do the titles reflect the overall pieces? What gives you inspiration for the titles of your collages?
My titles always come from myself. They're, first of all, what I'm thinking about when I'm making the collage, but it's also just about my whole, they're almost like the collages are almost like diaries, if you think about it. So they're a reflection of this myself at this moment in this place. So also at this moment in this place, certain ideas, certain words, the idea of naming. Filters into the work and becomes the title.